देह शिवावर मोहे है
Hello, Mr. Chauhan.
Hello, Puneet.
Welcome to my show, Valor and Wisdom. My name is Puneet Singh Mehra, and today again we have our special guest, Mr. Jay Chauhan, who is the author of Love in the Empire. Mr. Chauhan, are you enjoying your winters?
Excellent. See, I'm looking outside on the 22nd of November 2020 at the trees from Canada. We're all covered with snow.
Yes.
So, yes, tell me the topic today.
So, to all my viewers, today we're going to talk about the history, a story of one of the most bravest people in the world, the Sikhs. So, before I'm going to tell you the story, let's watch this energetic video by the Sikh soldier in India. Enjoy.
एक बार सत श्री अकाल फिर से जरा बोल दो सत श्री अकाल साहब नहीं सत श्री अकाल बोलो
So to all my viewers, I'm going to tell you a story about a soldier, Subedar Manta Singh, a Sikh warrior. It was during a time of World War. So what happened? Manta Singh was born in Jalandhar in Punjab in 1870. Later, Manta Singh joined the British Indian Army in 1906. Because he was educated, he rose up to the rank of Subedar, above the rank of the most, just below the European officer in the army. Manta Singh was in the Sikh regiment, and Manta Singh was also the part of an Indian Expeditionary Forces that was sent to France in the Great War. So during the World War in 1915, when Britishers are fighting against the Germans, Britishers are losing the battle. So suddenly, when it's in East Africa, when they're losing the battle, British bring the best regiment in the world, the Indian troops, especially the Sikh regiment. So in that Sikh regiment, Manta Singh was also there. He entered the field of the battle in the Battle of Neuve Chapelle. And most of the people doesn't know that half of the British forces are the Indian troops. So in the British fighting forces, 20,000 men were from the Indian army soldier. On the 12th of the March, when Britishers suffered the heavy losses against the Germans, also the Indian troops, the Garwar rifle, suffered heavy losses as they are attacked part of German line. That time, the Sikh regiment entered into a battle, and they completely changed the entire scenario in the battle. Their Sikh warriors are fighting like a hungry lions, and they are the main reason that Britishers won the World War, because of the Sikh regiment, Rajput regiment, Gurkha regiment. So what happened at that time? Germans counter-attacked with the 16,000 reinforcement. In 3 days of fierce fighting, the Allied forces suffered 13,000 casualties, including over 4,000 Indian soldiers. Manta Singh was also there, and Manta Singh, his captain was a Britishers named Henderson. They are fighting along with each other against the Germans. During the fierce battle, Manta Singh was a hungry lion. She fought like so courageously that entire Germans and the Romans were scared of these Sikh warriors. Not only that one, in that battle, Manta Singh fought bravely. At the same time, Manta Singh's friend and comrade, Captain Henderson, was seriously wounded and near to death. Manta Singh heroically risked his own life to safely put the Henderson in a wheelbarrow that he found in no man's land. Under gunfire to safety through, he himself was severely injured while carrying out the selfless rescue. Manta Singh didn't care about anything. He went to the battle. He saved Captain Henderson from all the bullets which he getting from the German side. But due to that one, Manta Singh also hit by many bullets. Manta Singh and his wounded comrades were sent to Brighton for hospitalization and treatment. A certificate signed by the chief resident officer at the Kitchener Indian Hospital in Brighton lists that Manta Singh had one and possibly both of his legs amputated. But unfortunately, Manta Singh succumbed and he got martyred to his injuries. A few weeks later, on March 15, 1915, Manta Singh and an injured man he rescued, Captain Henderson, had become firm friends as well as the brother in arms. When Manta Singh died, Henderson ensured that Singh's son, Asa, was taken care of. He encouraged him to join the Sikh regiment. And now I'm going to tell you about the bravery of the Sikh regiment, not from us, but by an Italian eyewitness testimony. The grace and the fury of the Sikhs. I quote, an Italian soldier. I was in the Mussolini army in World War, and he used to tell me a story. He told me that they were winning the war as they moved into East Africa. They won many battles against the British, and the British bought a regiment of fierce-looking warriors, men that looked like a ferocious animal when in battle, the Sikhs. Their war cry was so frightening that the Italian army used to shiver when it sounded. They attacked with their artillery. When they finished their artillery fire, they attacked with their guns. When they finished their bullets, they fought with the bayonets. And when their bayonets were snatched, they fought with the knives. And then even as they were bleeding, they fought with their bare hands. He also said, finally, I was captured by the Sikh regiment. He said, I was a prisoner of war with limited canteen. Even water was scarce. The Sikhs, the ferocious Sikhs that behaved like hungry lions on the field, were like benevolent guardians in the camps. They slept hungry themselves, but gave their food to the prisoners. They gave them so much respect and love that I used to say that he had never seen men like the Sikhs, so gallant in war and so gracious in victory. So this is the untold story of Subedar Manta Singh and the Sikh regiment of India who fought in the World War. And because of the Indian troops, especially the Sikh regiment, that Britishers won the World War. And as my mother always told me when I was in India, she told me, if you ever get lost in this world or maybe in India, remember one thing, just go and find a Sikh guy. If you found a Sikh guy, it means you found a God in this land. This is the quality of a Sikh. And I'll tell you a small description because I grew up with my Sikh brothers. Many people ask me, Puneet, you're like, you don't have any fear, right? And I proudly say, no. Then they ask me why. Then again, I proudly said, because I have my Sikh brothers with me. I don't have to fear with anyone in this world. If you like, I always tell the Sikhs in a small word. Sikhs mean the people who is simple, not so cunning, very simple forward, but bold, fearless, brave. This is the Sikh, and I'm really proud that I have my Sikh brother always with me. So, Mr. Chauhan, what do you think about that part of history?
Excellent. I'm so pleased, Puneet, that you told me your personal story and how your mother encouraged you to understand the realities of life in our survival in this world.
Yes.
So I'm going to connect some of those pieces of history that you mentioned and give it a global perspective. So this video and my comments are intended both for the Eastern and Western world, for the people to understand in India what courage we showed in our history through our soldiers, Gurkhas, Rajput regiments, and the Sikh regiments in particular, actually. And Gujaratis like me have not been too famous in terms of the military history, but we understand and appreciate that for India to be one country, it protect its boundaries and borders and independence, they need the regiments and people in the society who will defend not only the country, but their history as well. So we have great compliments to the Sikh regiments and Sikh people who are known in the Western world, Eastern world, in India understands that part of who the Sikh people are. But many people in the West do not know the distinction between the Sikh people and Gujarati people like me, right? And you are from a military family, and how the Singh people are also military people in the history of India. They are in the northwest part of India, where the people like Alexander, people like the Mughals, entered India through the Khyber Pass in the northwest. And the people in the later part of history, when the navy was properly developed in the British Empire, they entered India from around the Cape of Good Hope, came to Mumbai and entered India. In fact, there is a hotel in the front of the Mumbai Gateway of India, which I've stayed at. And so it's important for the audience to understand actually what part we played, not only in the history through the Sikh regiments, but also in terms of what we as Indian people have done in the war periods of the First World War. So to give you a perspective, the First World War, many people do not realize, both in the East and the West, in the Western world also, their history does not explain that the theater of war was not only Europe. When Franz Ferdinand was the person in 1914 killed by Serbian, and then the war flared up by different nation states of Europe and started the First World War. India at that time in 1914, when the First World War was controlled by Britain from England, and the regiments that India had, including Sikh regiments, and they actually were commanded by the British officers. War that you explained in the valor of Manta Singh, and the credit of victory goes to the British. And the British do not remember or do not want to appreciate actually what in fact the Indians have done through their soldiers to build up the British Empire. So it's very important that the British people understand actually that the part we played in their history, and in particular that in the First World War time, East Africa that you described. So just to make clear, I was born in Dar es Salaam, East Africa. To clarify the East African history, that they were about, it was controlled, East Africa was controlled by what was called German East Africa, which was established in 1886 by the Germans, and then lasted until the First World War, when the British effort came from Kenya and Uganda, and their soldiers, about 3,000 roughly, moving down from the north and went to Tanga, which is the northeast part of Tanganyika at that time, or the German East Africa, where the Indian regiment met the British regiment, and they were 10,000. The British were about 3,000, just under 3,000. The Germans was a similar number and commanded, and the British began to move with the Indian army southwards right up to Dar es Salaam. If you read my novel, you'll see how the transition took place in the German time, and the Germans left their legacy with the character that I portrayed in the novel of the tribe that is the north part of India, and how their soldiers also fought on the two different sides. It's very important to understand that. So by the 1918, when the First World War ended, with the treaty of the, it settled not only the war in Europe, but also the East African War. So basically, it is very important for the people to understand that East Africa has played a role in the history of the European countries that created the First World War and the Second World War. And in that war, by numbers, the Indian soldiers who died were about 62,000 soldiers who died. And the Indian soldiers in India never got a gratitude or thank you note. And when they have the parades in the Remembrance Day, they should be actually inviting these regiments to appreciate what the Indian soldiers have done in European history, especially English history, how they fought for the European cause against Germans and sided with the right part, because especially the Second World War, you can see actually that why the Western, like England, was opposed to the Nazi regime. And the Nazi regime was very brutal to the Jewish and many other people. And so it's important for the world to recognize that India has played an absolutely critical role with their soldiers in building up the history what we are today. So that's my story, to give your story a perspective. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Sure, Mr. Chauhan. And that's what we say, like, because of the Indian troops, the Sikhs, the Rajput, the Gurkha, the Garhwal, because of these people, that Nazis or any person who just want to do like a dictatorship, they all got lost because of our Indian troops. So that's the thing I just want to tell. Okay, Mr. Chauhan, see ya. Take care.
Thank you. See you.
Bye.
Bye.